Hi there. I enjoy dancing to some of these little intro music um, clips. Wow, that is really loud. I'm going to turn that down a little bit there. Okay. Hi, welcome to Storytime. I'm Dr. Jennifer Bird. I am a biblical scholar, and I care very much about what people do with what they find in the Bible. And that's better. Okay, sorry, didn't do that earlier. Yeah, I care about it because people find those scriptures really powerful and important and persuasive, and people find ways to tolerate the harmfulness in them often, and that is upsetting to me. So I am interested in talking about biblical passages, what they're saying as best as we can tell in their original contexts. What are they talking about? And then talking back to them at times, talking about ways to let go of some of the ideas here for those people who would like some encouragement doing that. Talk about the fact that ancient ideas, just because they're in a book that's sacred to billions of people, doesn't actually make them okay. And so that's what I like to do, is to talk about them, talk about the passages, talk about what's going on, talk about why people believe what they do about them, why they have a hard time thinking differently, all those kinds of things. So I am looking forward to talking about today's topic. I have to be honest, Proverbs 31 is not my favorite passage, but we're going to talk about that in just a second. First, I want to do a quick little heads up about next week. Very excited. Next week's guest is Dr. Rhiannon Grable, and I'm going to share her. I've shared the link to her faculty page in the comments. Let me share some of this with you just very briefly if you want. The picture is very small here, so that's why I'm also going to share her Facebook page just so you can see who she is. I think it's helpful. But she is, as you can see, the professor of religious studies. That's pretty small for you all, I think. Let's try that. Marcus M. and Carol M. Weinstein and Gilbert M. and Fanny S. Rosenthal, chair of Jewish Studies, and the Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies Advisory Board member. Actually, she's rotated off of that. It's sometimes getting these websites up to date takes time, or we just forget that we need to. So I knew her before that, but she and I were on that advisory board together for 3 years. She is just a lovely human being. And you can see if you scroll through her website, some of the works she has either penned herself or has edited are really important. There's a book in biblical studies. It was somewhat groundbreaking. It became a text that anyone working on Hebrew Bible passages, in particular in relation to women, you just knew about and needed to start here. Text of Terror by Phyllis Tribble. And so one of Rhiannon's books is called Texts After Terror. So now that we've had 20, maybe 30, 35 years of that scholarship, now what are we doing? So so you can see that the subtitle is Rape, Sexual Violence in the Hebrew Bible. Like, let's just talk about it, can we, please? She's done some work on Jonah. She's quite proud of this commentary. I do wish I could get my hands on it. I might take a look at it this fall, but she's very proud of the angle that she's bringing to this commentary. I know commentaries are not in everyone's wheelhouse who watch these videos, but you just never know. And so also a similar, which is a shorter version and essentially of Jonah. What are they saying about Jonah? But here's where I think the people watching this will find this interesting. She is currently a co-editor of Bible and Critical Theory. I was on that board for many years, but had a hard time contributing productively to it, so they kicked me off, which was appropriate. When Rhiannon and Robert Seasongood came on and took over that. But that's and I think that's I don't think there's a paywall. Bible and Critical Theory, for those of you who like to read a little bit more in depth and a little bit more more of a scholarly content, I think you would just eat this up. And I do think it is in the common access kind of thing. I think so. So, and then you can see some of her the other works she's contributed to or edited: Rape, Culture, and Religious Studies, Critical and Pedagogical Engagements. Really important work. The Bible, Gender and Sexuality Critical Readings, and you may recognize the name of her co-editor, Lynn Huber. So Lynn was on just a few weeks ago. And I think this is fascinating, and I'm interested in taking a look at it. Who knows what we'd make of it if we ever got our hands on it, The Bible and Margaret Atwood. But all of these people are, Kent Britnell and Lynn Marie Tonstad have done really important work in queer studies and biblical studies. And so Rhiannon and Kent and Lynn Marie did, this is a much more scholarly book. So wouldn't necessarily be one I would be bringing to your attention, but it's just to show you what she's into. Let me show you just a quick little, I'm assuming she's okay with sharing her Facebook profile picture, so you know who we're getting ready to talk to in a couple weeks, or next week. So that will be next week, May 9th. We'll go live, have a fun conversation about, I'm not even entirely sure yet. So we'll see where that takes us. Leanne and Grable next week. Also, I'm very excited to announce that I am halfway, maybe about halfway. I'm hopefully 2 weeks away from having the audio of my book ready and available, of Marriage in the Bible. What do the text say? That's going very well, which is exciting. And what else? Yeah, having a good time at the monthly live conversations. It's something different each time, which is nice. Whatever the people who show up want to talk about, that's what we've done. So anyway, just a heads up, that's for anyone who supports me through Patreon. And also Permission Granted. My second book is also something that I think a lot of people here have either read or would be interested in, because it's walking you through how to apply critical thinking meets reading the Bible. And I find that this is an important thing for people, even those who have, in a sense, kind of deconstructed, walked away from religious upbringing or whatever. It's actually really still helpful for a lot of people, because there are often threads connecting you to these ways of thinking that were prominent. And it's amazing how many adults I meet who still need some help extracting their connection to the Bible from their brain, so their wiring. So that's what Permission Granted in my second book does. I don't have a copy of it handy. And I also did the audio for that. So for those who prefer to listen, that's available as well. And I'm very proud of those two books, Permission Granted and Marriage in the Bible, because they were written to help people, and that is what they have done. So that's fun. That's good stuff. Today, someone reached out to me last week, and a pastor who said she's not really sure what to say about Proverbs 31, and it was on the list of scriptures to use for this coming Sunday, or maybe a couple Sundays away. And so she was curious if I had published anything on it, and I have not really. There's a reason for that. Mainly because it just kind of creeps me out. And I don't want to go there. And but so addressing this particular person, I said, I have like maybe 2 paragraphs on it in Marriage in the Bible in one of the chapters. So there's that. That's about all I've published on it. But also it came up a couple times. So I don't know if you all are aware of this. Maybe if you are, I'm going to just see if I can point accurately under this. So this is Wild Olive is it's an official podcast. Like we hire people to do the editing and the audio for us. And it's something that I create with another professor, a scholar, she's not a biblical scholar, she's a literature scholar. Her name is Jean Petrol, and she teaches the Bible as literature for Columbia College, which is not at all associated with any kind of a religious tradition. So she predominantly has students who come from no connection to the Bible, whereas I tend to have students who have a connection to the Bible. Some of them have left it behind, some of them very much still connected to it. So we have very different experiences, both with the Bible and with teaching the Bible to people anyway. So it's really fun. We have a good time talking about things. And what we do in Wild Olive, game-changing conversation about literature, culture, and the Bible, we talk about biblical passages that are used in literature or cultural things, in movies, that show up in movies, or songs, poetry. We use a lot of poetry, and actually a lot of poetry by women. Not that that's a big surprise. And in my conversations with Jean, this particular passage, the Proverbs 31 woman, has come up a couple times, and we've probably discussed it on 2 different podcast episodes because she did not have a super conservative upbringing. She actually had just the opposite. She was reared in a Catholic tradition, but wasn't really connected to it or necessarily very formed or informed by the religious element of that. And then she was atheist for a while, and then she was Quaker for a while, which can be the whole gamut, but predominantly, like atheistic, but, some sort of communal good kind of, communal thing going on there. But many Quakers do have some sort of a deism in them. And now she's married to a man who's evangelical, which is a very interesting whole side conversation. But the point is, she doesn't have the baggage with it that I do. And that I think many people who are watching this might have had or know of people who had, right? So she doesn't have any of the baggage with any of these passages in the Bible that I do. So it's really, really fun to talk about these with her. And she told me, she's like, the only thing I really notice in Proverbs 31 is that she saves up and she notices a plot of land that's going to be really good for her financially. It's going to be a good investment. And she saves up and she's savvy and she buys it. Like, that was never mentioned to me when I was in college. And we talked about the Proverbs 31 woman being a savvy businesswoman who saves her money and like outsmarts all the men who are looking to develop real estate, right? Like that was never, I don't know, you all, anyone here have that part of Proverbs 31 highlighted for you? No, probably not, right? So that's why I said in the description, I don't assume that people actually read the description that I put for these videos, but in case you do, it's why I put in there, I think I'm calling this one, Are You a Proverbs 31 Woman? Well, of course, most of the people actually that watch my videos are male. And therefore, I assume are identifying as a male or a man. So yeah, if you just play along. Think of someone you love who identifies as a woman and think about how these ideas would play out for them. But for everyone else, let's talk. I'm really eager to hear, and I wish we could be having this live conversation. So in the comments, like the good, the meh, and the ugly instead of the good, bad, and the ugly. Because there's some stuff that's good in there. There's some stuff that's either way, and there's some stuff that's pretty awful. So it's actually runs the gamut. And so this is your chance to vent about it if you need to. This is your chance to learn some more things about your friends if you come here and hang out, and chat with each other. For those of you who don't know what's controversial or whatever about this, that's great for you. And there's you can probably learn some interesting things today by paying attention to what others are saying. Hopefully I'll bring some nuggets that you hadn't heard about it before. So hopefully there'll be some things to learn and take away from this, and would love it if this is a good venting session for a whole bunch of you. I think that's all I wanted to say for now. And then I'm sure there'll be some other things. So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the biases of translation committees. Oh, that's something new, right? If you've watched any videos of mine, I imagine you only have to watch 3 or 4 before you hear me make a comment about translation committees and their choices, because their choices are far-reaching. They really do have a long-reaching impact on people, because people take this to heart. People trust it as God's word, and people use God's word to shape themselves, right? People use it to determine expectations for themselves, for each other. And it is rare to have a woman addressed directly in the Bible, right? So when that happens, it gets a lot of attention, right? Like too much, perhaps, right? Are you tracking? And what I saw when I was in a very conservative space, I was fundamentalist evangelical for 9 years of my life, right? And what I saw a lot if I'd go to a Christian bookstore or Christian bookstores, I would see, there'd be the sections for men, and the branding was just stereotypical, right? Patriarchal, stereotypical, right? Just dualistic for the men, and bold or, kind of strong corners and edges and firm. And then the women, it's all soft and sweet and pretty. And Proverbs 31. And I just picture when I say Proverbs 31, woman in my head has this like pink and flowers and sweet and soft and curvy things, right? And, which I don't identify with any of that, even when I was a conservative evangelical. I've just always been this in terms of like kind of both genders, in some ways. In terms of the way I dress, the way I talk, the way I behave, physically. So anyway, so it, it gets in conservative circles, it's like the standard for women, right? And I don't think they're reading it very thoroughly, right? Also of note, this is just random anecdotal for anyone who's interested. When I was in college, there were some women that I would meet with, young women, or like the Young Life Leaders wife, would kind of take on the women, by default. And, we would talk about reading through the book of Proverbs every month. And so that means there happen to be 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. How convenient. So the day of the month is the chapter of Proverbs that you read. And, it's a thing, right? And it's interesting. I was reflecting on that earlier this week, when I decided I was going to be doing this. Like, yeah, it's interesting how certain parts of it didn't really connect with me very well, because it wasn't really, it wasn't the interesting stuff. The interesting chapters about the proverby kinds of content doesn't start until chapter 10 or 11. So the first 10 days of the month really wasn't a very exciting read from our perspective. But then you get to all the kind of the catchphrasy, pithy Proverbs, right? Proverbs, like 2-line nuggets of wisdom, right? That's what the book of Proverbs is known for. But there's a whole lot more to it than that, first of all. Second of all, it is important to note, in my opinion, that the wisdom that's being talked about is intimately connected to knowledge of God or fear of the Lord, right? So this element of, it's not just respect and awe, it is fear. The language there, people tone down the implications. People tend to want to say, no, this is just about respecting the Lord. Knowledge of respect, love for the Lord gives you wisdom and, all this kind of stuff. And I understand why people want to do that, because it's more palatable and it makes it more likely that people will continue to read it. But the language is the fear of the Lord. And that is important to me to note, that really means fear. Okay. And I'll just leave it at that, because people can disagree with me, and that's the way that will be. So the book of Proverbs itself is about wisdom. The first 10 chapters have a lot of warnings to a son about wisdom and folly, and they are both personified as female. And the language is predominantly, right, geared towards a presumed hetero son, and cling to, seek after wisdom and flee from folly. And in general, that's good advice, right? But the other piece of this is it's very dualistic. The wisdom that's talked about, even in those early chapters, it's all very starkly dualistic. It's right or wrong, yes or no. There is no nuance in any of the chapters that are talking about wisdom. Okay. It's great for children. That's, I keep coming back to this when I talk about the Bible, is so much of the content in the Bible is at the level of, not appropriate for, but at the level of children. What children need, and they need clear boundaries. We need to set up a framework here, whatever that is for you and your family, like you've chosen. But children need some structure and some, this is how things work. And then you let them play within that, right? And discover themselves within that framework. So the fact that women in their 20s, 30s, 40s are still reading the Proverbs daily, that's part of why I wanted to raise this point. It's not giving them wisdom that they need. It's giving them childlike wisdom. and which means you're not being encouraged to mature in your faith, in your wisdom, in your person as a thinking being. You're not. You're being kept in a children's world. Okay? And that is true of so much of the content of the Christian Bible, both testaments, both primary testaments. That the language, the presuppositions, the dualistic framework, it's all that is for children. Okay? So, all kinds of interesting things here. And one other thing I want to say that I think is deeply, deeply underappreciated, in particular in the conservative circles, which is, again, it intrigues me when conservative circles do not actually read closely a given text, whether it's because it's a violent text and they want to not go there, or if it's something like this that has elements of being incredibly empowering for women. When you see a conservative community not honoring what the language actually says, right? It's just fascinating, because of course it's not, the language itself is actually a challenge to a hierarchical relationship. And that's not tolerated in a conservative community. That conservative communities in general, like, show me one that doesn't function because they are hierarchical and the males are at the top. Okay, so back to this pastor who reached out to me. She said, the one thing I keep thinking about, and I'm certain that this woman didn't have like conservative fundamentalism as a part of her formative years, because what she said is, I just see this thing about a woman being, what I see is wisdom. I was like, that's awesome. That's what she takes away from Proverbs 31 in terms of content for women, is this value of wisdom. I'm like, okay, right on. Good for you. I'm going to endorse that. I think there's a lot more that what's being endorsed or being suggested for women in this passage, but I think she's right. I think ultimately this is the book of Proverbs. Like, this is one of the 5, 3, 4, depending on how you count, right? You've got Proverbs, you have the book of Job, you have Ecclesiastes, and I feel like I'm leaving something out. Song of Songs is not wisdom literature, but I feel like I'm leaving out one of the... Anyway, so it's one of 3 or 4 books in the Hebrew Bible that is talking about wisdom. It's the wisdom literature of the Bible, right? So yeah, I think a person needs to start with the fact that this is the final element of the book of Proverbs, right? The book of Proverbs is about wisdom, even if it is conceived through a childish lens. It is about wisdom in their own framework of it. Okay, let's respect that. And yeah, it is talking about women as in the ways that women can or do or whatever embody lots of forms of wisdom. So like, on a kind of a big picture, pull back from it, general sense, that's lovely. And I don't see that being talked about when I see Proverbs 31 women Bible studies and, journals and all the things that a Christian bookstore might have to encourage a woman in her faith through the lens of Proverbs 31. I'm not going to see wisdom that is grounded and solid and impressive. But I think that is in there. And there's another reason why I think that's in there, besides what we're going to read about it, because we will read it. Give me just a second. I'm almost there. I'm almost done with the intros. There's a very little known passage, and I can't remember if I read this last time when I did when I say last time, I mean when I did a live stream about why wisdom and folly are both personified as a woman. So I can't remember if I talked about this, but chapter 8 of Proverbs has a short creation story. I just wish we were in person so I could ask, how many of you knew that? How many of you have heard of that? So chapter 8 has this really lovely little segment that says basically that wisdom was God's co-creator in creating the universe, in creating creation, whatever it exists in their understanding. That wisdom was God's right hand person, creator, co-partner, co-creator, whatever. And wisdom, yes, is definitely personified as female because the noun itself in the Hebrew, chokhmah, is a feminine noun. So chapter 9, chapter 8, I'm going to start at like verse 18 of Proverbs chapter 8. Actually, verse 15, by me kings reign and rulers decree what is right, what is just, like that's fun. By me rulers rule and nobles, all who govern rightly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and prosperity. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice. This is wisdom, embodied wisdom, right? Wisdom embodied as a human talking, right? Endowing with wealth those who love me and filling their treasuries. Now here's where it gets interesting. Verse 22. The Lord created me first of his work, or at the beginning of his work, either one. Wisdom. So God created, in this creation story, God created wisdom first. I have to tell you, STEM people tend to really like this creation story. The first of his acts long ago. Ages ago, I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills, I was brought forth. When he had not yet made earth and fields, or the world's first bits of soil. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the fountains of the deep. So that's a parallelism going on there, right? We just restated the same thing for emphasis, right? When he assigned to the sea its limit so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was beside him like a master worker or a partner in creation. And I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world and delighting in the human race. Okay? So for better and worse, wisdom in the Hebrew Bible is talked about as a female. And that gets spun in any way but as super empowering, it seems to me. So here we are at the close of the book of Proverbs, and we've got this ode to women. And so, and it is noteworthy, and I call it an ode, but I'm not being facetious. I'm not just being playful. It's an acrostic. It starts in verse 10, and it goes through the letters of the alphabet. So 10 through 31. And so each verse starts with, so the first verse, chapter 31, verse 10, starts with Aleph. That verse in the Hebrew does. Verse 11 starts with the letter Bait. Sorry, I was going to say beta. There's a reason that those are so similar sounding. However, the third verse starts with Gimel, the fourth with Dalet, right? And so it's an acrostic. It's lovely. We take the alphabet, and now we're going to say something using each of the letters of the alphabet, and it is an ode. It is a, whatever, to women, to a woman, to women who are resourceful, who invest, who, there are all kinds of things in this chapter that you don't tend to hear. And then there are, of course, some of the stereotypical ones too. Okay, so there's that. Okay. And then I'm gonna read through it, and I'll pause and comment. But the first thing I wanna say before we read, or the final thing I wanna say, I should say, before we read is, the first verse in this. So the opening to chapter 31 is more, advice to the son of the king. But then verse 10 starts. I'm looking at the NRSV, and the translation is not great. A capable wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels. Okay. I just can't with that. But anyway, so people make a thing of the Eshet Hayel. That's Hayel. Eshet is a woman, and it's compounded with the next word, and that's why instead of Isha, which is what you tend to hear when I talk about it says Isha, a woman, Eshet, it's been contracted. So same as Isha, just in a different form of the noun. Isha Chayil. So what is that Chayil? How is that translated? And I do think it's worth noting what the different English translations say about this this verse. Oh, sorry. So it's the first verse of this ode to women. And so the opening statement, right? A woman, a capable wife, a capable woman who can find a virtue. So I'm looking at the first line here, the King James of the 21st century, I think is what that meant. Who can find a virtuous woman, for her price is far above rubies. This is, I didn't do a comparison. The word for that's being translated sometimes as precious and sometimes worthy. And what's happening in 1 Peter 3 that also talks about a woman's worth. I think it's this. They're two different languages, and so I haven't looked to see if they're used to translate into each other. But regardless, what's being said is this particular kind of a woman is very valuable. Okay. I personally cringe at precious. The word precious just drives me crazy. You can just, whatever. You don't have to like that. But that's the way I am. It just drives me crazy. I don't know. Anyone else? Does someone love the word precious as a description of you as a female? Like I know I just mocked it, but I'm actually going to back up from that and leave some space for that to be a positive thing. Is that something that some of you have appreciated, being called precious? Maybe you have. So I'm sorry to have stomped on that. For me, it just makes me cringe. It's, it is it feels infantilizing. It feels like I'm fragile, but sweet and valuable. So we're going to put you on a pedestal so we can look at you instead of letting you get some shit done in the world. That's for me. So that's me. And I get that is not everybody. And I get that when something is important to you and is helpful for you, I want to affirm that for you. Okay. The other thing I want to highlight here is there are 56 English translations in this. I pulled up Proverbs 31 verse 10, and then Bible Gateway will pull up whichever language you want to look at, all of their translations of that one verse, or whatever section of verses. And so there are 56 English translations on the website currently, and 34 of them chose to translate the Isha part, right? Remember how I do this whole thing of my translation says, where did the woman go? Where did it go? I lost the woman card. Oh, it's over there in the corner. Sorry. You know how I do this? My translation says, right? My translation says Mary, but when I read it, I'll say take or whatever. So in the Hebrew, in this verse, it is a woman of Hayil, valor, something, right? But 34 of the 56 chose to translate that as a wife. So you're starting out. This is a passage the one passage in the whole Bible that's trying to give an affirmation to women, and people are being directed to think that this applies to wives. So you're being prepared as a girl right? As a female identifying, externally identified person, to think about your role in life is to be these things, but also in the within your ultimate role as a wife, right? So it is powerful that what I find misleading um, language. It's very powerful. But so capable is what. But I have to say that the NRSV, when they updated it, they went from capable here to a woman of strength. Thank you for that, right? But still, what do people mean by, how do they understand Heil? Is it a woman of worth, noble character, virtuous woman, a capable, intelligent woman? The AMP is an interesting, so an amplified version. An excellent woman, that's nice, right? One who is spiritual, capable, intelligent, and virtuous. Again, we could have conversations about these, but those are pretty, solid descriptors, I would say. Who is he who can find her? So is this mocking this standard, that this standard is impossible to reach? I actually have a friend who's just very funny friend. His name is Peterson Toscano, and he's just a riot. And at one point when we were hanging out, he made some comment about reading, and please just roll with me on this. I mean this in good spirit and fun. He said, it could, reading it as a Jewish mother wanting the best for her son, a capable woman, a capable wife. Who can find such a woman? Like, nobody's good enough for my son, or whatever. I liked that because it pulled me out of the way I had always thought about it, and then that allowed me to look at it differently. Is this saying this is the ideal? And goodness, this is a lot to find in one person. Is it mocking? Is it mocking the women in the community because they're too exhausted with too many children and they can't do all the things on the list? Is it saying, this would be great, and who knows if she exists? I mean, there are lots of ways of reading this. So, but I think it's important to note that it raises a question for people, right? What's actually being said there? I'm going to just, how difficult it is. So the easy, that's an interesting label in and of itself. So the easy translation, how difficult it is to find a wife who is truly wise. I mean, that kind of stuff like makes me want to punch you in the face. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know if that's actually maybe part of what they intended. But notice how often something like that, how difficult it is. Oh, they actually used valuable, worth much more than valuable jewels. Interesting suggestion, right? Are men ever talked about as worth jewels? Are men ever talked about and compared? Is their worth ever compared to jewelry? Precious gems? No. Show me when that happens. Do you know what I'm saying? And that precious jewels in that sense is rare, right? But and not that precious. But still, why are women compared that way? Why are women given value in that kind of language? Does it still happen today? I think so, right? Not a coincidence, right? I don't want to dwell on this too much. I just want to note it, bring it to your attention, and then we can move on, right? I was going to see if there were, who can find a valiant woman in the Jubilees translation at the bottom of the screen here. Who can find a valiant woman, for her price is far above precious stones. Okay, well, that's nice. Of course, the Message can't just do one verse because he just blends it all together and translates it to current ideas, or more current, maybe not current, but a woman of excellence, an excellent wife, right? We have, I think I've made my point, right? We do have some noble character going on down here, okay? Noble character, but who can find a good wife, right? A wife of noble character. This is what I read a lot in my evangelical days, is the NIV. She is worth far more than rubies. And here's the Orthodox Jewish Bible. Again, they just choose to transliterate instead of translate it because it is so contentious. People don't know what to make of it, so they just an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, an excellent wife. Cringe, cringe. For her worth is far above rubies. Okay. All right. I think I've made my point here. All right. Let's get back to reading through. I'm just gonna pop this up. I hadn't, but I find this an interesting observation. A precious jewel in a king's crown means someone he rules over. It's an interesting suggestion. You have pink poop at the end of that comment. I just want to comment on that. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, here's this one. This is I haven't been paying attention to the chat, but I'm hoping. Yep. I'm laughing at this one. I don't know what April was responding to, but this punch me in the face. Okay, apparently there's some chatter going on in the chat, which is great. Okay, I am gonna start reading then. We're actually gonna get to it now. We're gonna get to it. So I mentioned the acrostic. I mentioned that people tend to downplay that this is a woman who embodies wisdom in lots of different forms, as compared to this is a woman and this is what her job should be as a wife and mother. So I think that we should absolutely say this is a woman, not a wife. I also think it's interesting how little is said about her as a mother. Pay attention, okay? There's not a lot. There are some assumptions that she is a mother, but her role, not often in this chapter, is this talking about a mother and the role of a mother. Also worth noting, this is the last thing. Yep, I knew there was something. I had my little notes here. So the footnotes, again, this is an old version. I mean, this is a 25-year-old whatever version, but the footnotes, I like to tell people to go look at them, but then they just start to make me sad these days. So where is it? It's the note capable, variously rendered. So the Chayil, sometimes rendered good, perfect, virtuous, noble, worthy, valiant, blah, 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 blah. Her varied economic activities. Here's the part that I find interesting and a little bit makes me chuckle. Verses 11 to 19. Her varied economic activities contribute to the well-being of the household, period. So let me ask you, which of the economic activities that men undertake are not also for the benefit of the household? Because if it's about a paycheck, it's about the household, right? I get that there's a difference. I do, but it is not as big of a difference as most people think. If you're investing in real estate, that's this, right? That's not specifically about the house. That's about survival because you're trying to make money, right? Okay, let's go. I'm not sure what that Super Saiyan Saiyan is gonna, but I'm gonna take that as a positive. I don't know, but I think so. Yeah, okay. All right, here we go. I guess I could pull it up and we could read it together this way. There's something about I just like holding it in my hands, but let's do it. Let's go back and do that, and so you can see it while I read it. See, it even says that an ode to a woman of strength in the as the heading, which I don't like headings because headings are often very misleading. So bias shows up in the headings, bias shows up in the footnotes, but bias shows up in the translations, right? All of them. Okay, a woman of strength who can find. So that's the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition, right? She is far more precious than jewels. I'm going to just let that one ride. I think it should be more like she is quite worthy. But anyway, the heart of her man, my English says, the English here says husband, but the heart of her man trusts in her. Does that matter that I say her man and not her husband? Does that matter to you? And he will have no lack of gain. Well, that's just a very interesting thing to say in general, right? A virtuous woman, a strong, a capable woman, a woman who is savvy in business. He will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. That ought to be a good partner in general, right? All right. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. So now she's starting to create things that she will sell, right? That isn't just about clothing people. It's also about other kinds of goods, right? She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from far away. So I live in a relatively small town. It's growing in terms of cultural diversity, but you know, there's been a Thai restaurant here for only a few years. You know what I'm saying? It's very white, but there've been a few, kind of here and there, hit and miss, non, just American South kind of, restaurants in town. And I think about like what it takes for people who are, say, of Asian descent, and they want to have foods that they're familiar with, what it takes for them to have the food that helps them cook like they cooked at home, right? That's tricky. That's expensive often, right? And you gotta, if I want to, if I want some curry paste, right? I gotta go. There's a store like over on the other side of town. There's only one, though there are several that carry, groceries from other parts of the world. Only one carries the paste I'm talking about, like she brings her food from far away. So she is clever. She is multicultural, right? She works with fine foods from various places. Like that's a really interesting comment to make. I don't really have anything I'm trying to prove or say here. I just think it's really interesting. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks for her female slaves. I'm going to interrupt myself now. Okay. There is also a side to this whole ode to women that will land you in the emergency room if you are living up to all of it. I'm just going to say it, right? This is Martha Stewart. If Martha Stewart was doing all the things she does and if she didn't have a team of people that she trained to do the stuff she does. You know what I'm saying? Like if you rise while it's still night and you also, the next couple verses down, her lamp does not go out at night. Like you work late into the night and also get up before it's dawn. Like if you live that way, you're not living past 45. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's an element of this is an impossible standard. Also, as we just noted in verse 15, she has enslaved peoples. Like she actually owns other people. So problematic. She's not getting it all done herself is part of what that says, but also this is part of that economy, right? Humans end up belonging to other humans, and that is worth noting as a biblical thing that is real. There are actually some Christians out there who want to deny that the Bible endorses slavery. It's wild to me. So I want to comment on that. But look at this. She considers a field and buys it. Okay, that's not just a quick thing. Like she considers a field. She's checking out the real estate listings. She's checking out the ones that aren't listed yet, right? And she buys it, which means she saves up. She has her own money, right? With the fruit of her own hands, she plants a vineyard. That's a luxury crop, folks. That's not sustenance food, right? I'm not trying to make any kind of a point by that, except that's a really interesting thing. She is a businesswoman. She's thinking about how to make money. She girds herself with strength. I haven't looked up all the different nouns here, so I can't offer much in terms of what it's saying in the Hebrew, but she girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. Um, yeah, I don't know about you, but that's a good idea. Right? I mean, if you follow any of the health gurus or any of the people out there who are trying to talk about well-being and what it takes to live well for a long time, having physical strength is a part of that. So it's really interesting to me because this is no wilting daisy. Like she's right, she's strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. She knows how to make a good product. Where's the mother role, by the way? Have we hit a mother role yet? No, we have not. She does provide for her household, but that doesn't even mean that there are children in it, right? Um, I just saw this, so I'm gonna thank you for the super chat or even just the super endorsement. Thank you for that. Thank you for helping remind us about subtle ways the Bible can affect how we think about women. It's beautiful to keep raising awareness. Thank you, hard work. I appreciate that. And so thank you for that, for appreciating what I'm doing. Um, yes. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night, right? So she rises before dawn. She goes to bed after. It's problematic. Okay, that's problematic. As a person who's dealing with long-term exhaustion, yeah, that's problematic. But I do appreciate the productivity element of it and the focus on getting work done, that part of it. But I do think that rest and de-stressing and all of that is also very important. And in our day and time, at least in the context I live in and a lot of the people I interact with, being able to shut everything down at a decent hour and getting a good night's rest needs to be valued more than it is. So anyway, back to the text. She puts verse 19, she puts her hand to the distaff and her hands hold the spindle. Okay. So I've literally tried all kinds of sewing, crocheting, knitting, all this. I'm like, it doesn't do anything for me. No. But I love that there are people, male, female, and otherwise, right, who like to do those things. So yeah, she knows how to weave, right? Her hand holds the spindle. She knows how to do this stuff, right? I kind of wish I liked to wish I knew how to use a sewing machine and I could make my own clothes, but like I just don't have no interest or time. But okay, that's good. That's efficient. That's all kinds of things, right? And in particular, in their day and time, obviously, it's very different. An important part, right? She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. Okay, that's lovely, right? We're not going to talk about the economic system that creates poverty and the needy. I'm just not going to do that, but I do want to note it that that's a part of the picture here, and she apparently is kind of wealthy, so that needs to be stated. Okay, she's not afraid for her household when it snows, for all her household are clothed in crimson, right? So luxurious fabrics, crimson, purple. She has money. She has means, okay? So let's just be really clear about that. She has means. She makes a really good quality product. She has saved up money. She's been able to buy real estate. She has people that are enslaved to her, helping her get all this work done, and she's benefiting from it and not them. I mean, there are all kinds of things going on here, right? She makes herself coverings. Okay, yeah. And then don't go to dumpy plain stuff, but like go to, costume designer. Like let's just imagine, right? Who knows, right? Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Okay, so yeah, wealthy. Her man is known in the city gates, taking his seat among the elders of the land. Again, I come up with all kinds of comments and questions in my head. People of means are often respected more than they maybe ought to be, or more than people without the same amount of financial means. And so their characters, they are assumed to have better character than those who don't have as much money. That's a thing that's been going on for a couple thousand years, and it bugs me. So let's just state that. So there's all of these things, but the man she's partnered with is known in the city gates, which that's the place where men hang out and chat and share, talk about business and talk about life. And if you're a worker, If you're a enslaved person and a worker, you're not likely to spend time at the gates because you don't have time to do that, right? So there's an element of luxuriousness to hanging out at the gates, being respected there, right? So there's all of that going on here when you say that about her man. She makes linen garments and sells them. She supplies the merchant with sashes. Strength and dignity are her clothing. And she laughs at the time to come. She is not worried about the future, right? Strength and dignity, like you could do worse. You know what I'm saying? That's good stuff, right? She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. What a concept, right? I'm trying to think about all these things through my current contexts, but through the context I used to read this in, it was a very effeminate, like feminized and subservient and kind of feeble and meek. Meek is a word that I would use to describe the way I thought about this before, right? So this is a woman who is just kind of hanging out in the shadows of everybody else. But this woman that I'm seeing right now, that I'm reading right now, that is not a meek woman, right? I do not think so. So the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. That comes out of experience and having lived and knowing that kindness is better than a sharp tongue. Kindness moves mountains, right? Kindness opens doors and alleviates fear and does all kinds of things in good ways in relationships. Kindness is powerful and is something we're missing and lacking in so many places today. You tracking with me? So I find that not a sweet, meek woman being sweet and kind, right? That the gentle, sweet, mousy kind of, I'm just going to be sweet and kind and like that's not actual. That is often not genuine kindness, right? To me, that comes out of having lived, knowing who she is, having had to contend with men, because if she's selling things in the marketplace, right, that's not an easy thing. There are references to women in Jewish settings. Elephantine is one of them, and this is an ancient city that, that there were women who ran the businesses. Women had their own places in the market spaces, right? And people often like to say today, well, women, their work was just in the house and they didn't go into, the marketplaces, wherever. Well, that's not actually true. And I get why people, for the most part, know, but they did. And imagine what they had to bump up against on the regular if they did have their own stall in the marketplace. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Pick your field today that is predominantly male, and then put a woman in that field and go ask her some questions about her stories, right? How little she's respected, all those things, even if she's better than most of the men in the room, more intelligent or better at it, whatever, that she'll, so I think this woman's tough, regardless of her, the privileges she does have, according to the way that she's being described. She's tough too. Okay. I think. You do not have to agree with me. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household. We still haven't even seen a reference to children until this next verse, right? We have not been talking about her role as a mother. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Okay, again, I'm going to say that there's a time and place for idleness. It's actually helpful to take a break every now and then. At the same time, so I, especially because of the kind of issue of exhaustion and people overworking themselves and not eating the bread of idleness. That is, we kind of need to flip that, I think. So I'm just going to appreciate what they're saying, right? That she is productive and she has a lot of energy and she gets shit done, right? But we need to be careful. extrapolating that and expecting it all the time of every woman, every person who identifies as a woman. Okay. Her children rise up and call her happy. That's yeah, I haven't looked at that recently. See what that is. Her man too, and he praises her. Okay, so she does have children. That is a thing that is said of this particular woman. But what's interesting to me about that comment, that line, um, is this is in an you know. So this predates the whole New Testament era, right? So to have what am I trying to say? To have a consciousness of what children actually say or think about their parents is interesting because in the Greek in particular and Roman era, children are back to that silent, not seen, seen but not heard kind of thing. It's an interesting thing to have a reference to a mother from the perspective of children, and it is a positive, pleasant thing. It's kind of, whatever you want to make of it, but it's the only reference to her as a mother, by the way, out of 21 verses. Okay. And her man, the English says husband, but her man too, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. I'm just going to keep moving. And then this is a song, I don't know about any of you all, but this is a song, this next verse that I knew, it's a line I knew put to song. Anyone else know this song? Charm is deceptive, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. A woman who fears the Lord. Anyone? Twyla Paris, I believe, is who sang that. And it was something that I took in my evangelical days. Got some Amy Grant, some Twyla Paris, all those good Michael Card. Yeah, I just took it in. Charm is deceptive and beauty is vain. Really? But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. All right, we need to talk about that. We need to pull that shit apart because charm applies to anybody, not just women. Thank you very much. So charm can be good or bad. It can be disarming, which can be helpful, right? Charm is a whole bunch of things. And so this is one of those really fascinating examples of the dualistic nature of this declaration, the dualistic nature of the thinking, it's all or nothing, right? It's good or bad. There's no in between in the language of the Bible. And in particular, here's a really powerful, has been harmful for many people without them even being aware of it being harmful to them. Line. Okay. So is beauty vain? Beauty is vain. Yeah, that could be. I don't know. Lots of us enjoy looking at beautiful things. Does that, if you find yourself beautiful, more power to you. I'm a little bit cranky about that on the flip side, it is nice. It is actually nice that it's saying there's more to a person than the way they look, and the value is within. I think that's really powerful, personally. I don't like the denigration of charm and beauty. But in the context of the Hebrew Bible overall, I'll take it because most of the Hebrew Bible talks about women based on their looks. Men fall in love at first sight with women, so she must be beautiful in his eyes. Even the book Song of Songs or Song of Solomon only talks about what the lovers are talking about each other's bodies, but they're only talking about what their bodies look like. They're not talking about what a great mind they have or how strong and worthy they are. You know what I'm saying? They're not talking about what a good scholar they are or what a good teacher or what a good weldsman or what a good whatever, right? So it's frustrating to me that there's a nugget in there that I think is really valuable, which is there is more to us as people than what we look like on the outside. But the whole verse here, verse 30, is just jacked up, in my opinion, because I don't think charm is always deceitful. And I don't think beauty is a thing to dismiss. And saying a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised is what we should expect from the Hebrew Bible, because it is interested in creating the worship of this one God. That is one of the primary purposes of this book, this collection of writings. So we shouldn't be surprised, and I'm not, but it contributes to this misunderstanding of the phrase "fear the Lord" or the fear of the Lord or whatever. It contributes to that misunderstanding. It is. I'm just going to stop talking about that. A woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Okay, we couldn't just circle back to a woman of great characters to be praised. No. So here's the thing, right? So in the book of Proverbs, in the in the book of Proverbs, wisdom is heavily connected to a right understanding of God and this particular God. Other books in the Hebrew Bible talking about wisdom actually challenge this kind of stereotypical way of talking about things. So anyway, so imagine all the women in particular who have internalized Twyla Paris's song, right? Charm is deceptive, beauty is vain, but woman who fears the Lord. You might end up wearing clothes that don't show off your figure because, you don't want to cause people to. Anyway, give her a share in the fruit of her hands and let her works praise her in the city gates. Just going to leave that one. I think that one kind of speaks for itself. And that's the end of the book of Proverbs, is this closing word about the ode that is an ode to women. I really didn't expect this to take an hour. I guess I had some things to say. Oh my gosh. Oh, April. Fear the Lord because we love inappropriate power dynamics. That's awesome. Thank you for that chuckle. In whose name you ask one another. Oh. Okay. We don't need quotations from the Quran here. I appreciate that that's important to you, but it's really not relevant to this conversation. But you do you. That's all I have. I think let me make sure I commented on everything I wanted to comment on. Wisdom, in the Hebrew Bible is actually downplayed, I think, and in particular, right? This woman is impressive, really. Most of the things she does, I'm not interested in doing. I think that's important to note, right? But she's industrious. She's clever. She's savvy. She's a businesswoman. She's a realtor, she's into real estate. She's into beautiful things. She likes beautiful clothes. This woman gets some shit done. So there's all that. Any comments? Any closing comments or questions before we wrap this up? I am so delighted that so many of you wanted to be here, were able to be here live. I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate that some people will be watching this later. And what really helps me is if you do like a video that you've seen of mine, whether it's one of the longer ones or one of the short ones, to like it. If you haven't already subscribe to my channel. It helps me, but it also helps other people who are interested in these kinds of conversations learn about the fact that I'm doing this kind of stuff. So it's you're kind of helping to create this virtual community when you do that. So I appreciate that. I am just seeing some just everybody's enjoying the conversation, and oh my goodness, I love that song, and I just never know what to do with that line. Yes, exactly, Carrie Ann. Who does that benefit? Right. It's this is one of the, what's their name? I've forgotten the name of the band. She's got a short skirt and a long jacket. But yes, that is important to follow up with because a short skirt and a long jacket sure looks sexy and sassy, but yeah. Um, why can I not think of the name of that band? Anyway, love them. Um, someone gonna cake. Thank you. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for being here. We are next week. Rhiannon Grable is going to join me, and I'm going to go out with some music. So thank you all for being here today, and I'll see you next week.